Hey, everybody, what's up? Listen, you've been here before. You know what to do. Hit like, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and let's get after it. Hi, hello, and welcome to your favorite average to good podcast. Call it what you want. If we were a salsa, I feel like we'd be what? Mild to a little bit spicy? I don't know how that works. With a little bit of bite? Whatever. I'll let everybody else figure it out from home. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Tony Meola and Charlie Davies, and we've got a great show for everyone. We are talking about Chuck and Tony's roster thoughts since they weren't here last week. The players the most to gain and potentially lose in this camp. In October, we have our U.S. men's national team striker of the week, U.S. versus Italy at the U20 World Cup in the round of 16. And then Philly, the Union, clinch the Supporters' Shield. But are we backing them to win the MLS Cup? Now, before we get there, though, Chuck, you're wearing a Venezia jersey, a goalkeeper jersey. It's looking pretty sharp. I'm going to say, dare I say, maybe even fire.
Thank you, Juan. This is kind of like an ode to Tony Meola. It feels like this is a 90s goalkeeper kit. The ones that Tony made famous when he was standing on his head in goal. But ultimately, Venezia, they do it right. We took our first honeymoon to Venezia. No, we went to our first anniversary in Venice. So this got a special meaning to it. Plus, it's fire. So appreciate you.
It is fire.
Show them the shoulders. Show them the shoulders. That's
it's a nice little touch. Yep. So Tony, Chuck said standing on your head back in the day. We could argue standing on your ponytail because that ponytail was next level back in the day. Bring it back, Tones. Bring it back.
Jimmy, what's next in the rundown?
Tony Seagal. Let's go. Tony Seagal.
Woo! All right, Tones. All right. We'll keep it moving. What are your thoughts on this roster for the U.S. men's national team in this October window? And what stands out for you first and foremost?
Well, the first thought is that it's the strongest roster I think we've seen from Mauricio Pochettino in his time with the national team. Trying to think of a stronger one. Of course, Tyler Adams not being here, but that's for personal reasons. And we know that bringing a new child into the world. So obviously he's got to stay there. There's some guys that are reintroduced, like a Mark McKenzie, Anthony Robinson coming back into the mix here, Miles Robinson coming back into the mix, who, by the way, I think's had some really good games this season so far. And then I think we're going to continue to have a conversation, and Chuck can chime in better on this, about the forwards, right? About who it is. And I think Balogun, comes out of this thing and is the number one guy. But I think it's those spots behind him before Ricardo Pepi gets fully 100% integrated into this group. Like, who follows up? Because one thing we know about going into the World Cups, and it's the unfortunate part, is oftentimes we see an injury. And who are those backup guys? Those are kind of initial thoughts, Jimmy.
Okay, before we get to the forwards and before I hear from Chuck, 4 goalkeepers coming into this one: Chris Brady, Matt Freese, Patrick Schulte, Matt Turner. Are you good with 4 goalkeepers? Do you feel like we should have maybe used the spot in a different area of the field?
Well, he could have brought in other guys. Like if he wanted to bring in a 9th defender, he could have done that, or a 9th midfielder. I think what it's telling me right now is that we don't know who the number 3 guy is. Zach Steffen seems to be out of the picture for now. So is it Chris Brady? Is it Patrick Schulte, who's been there for a couple camps? So, I think that's what 4 tells me.
Okay. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Let's go to the forwards then, Chuck. So we have Patrick Agyemang in, Flo Balogun in, Christian Pulisic listed as a forward, Tim Weah listed as a forward, though I get the sense we might see him as a right wing back if we play a back 3 because Serginho Dest isn't in. And then Haji Wright, who has been absolutely crushing it in the championship with 8 goals, leading the league right now, and Alex Sendejas are kind of our attackers. Are you good with this? Ricardo Pepi's obviously hurt, so he can't get called in. Would you like to have seen anybody else? How are you feeling?
I feel great about this roster because I like the fact that Aiden Morris is brought in because he's playing every week and he's playing well. So for me, it's finally you're getting guys who are being brought back into the fold because of how well they're playing. So their club form has been spot on. So it's not only that they're playing, but they're playing well. So like a Tessman, for instance, who's been lighting it up at Lyon, he's missed a few windows. He's back in, and rightfully so. So For me, I think Balogun is the clear number one. Pepe would be here if he was fully going, and he is the clear number two for me. And so similar to the goalkeeper position, there isn't a clear three. So, Ajiman has done well actually since he's come into the championship. So I'm happy that he's starting to thrive and adjust to the level there. Haji Wright has been, I think, consistent under Frank Lampard, and Frank Lampard trusts him. I think that's a good manager-player relationship at the moment. And can Frank continue to push Haji in those areas? Remember, Frank Lampard played with Didier Drogba, one of the greatest strikers of our generation. So if he can continue to push him and say, hey, this is where you need to be, this is what Didier did using his size, his body shape, anticipation, I think that's only going to help him as he continues to mature in that position. Because remember, he's been playing a lot of left forward, left wing in different systems. He hasn't been predominantly a 9. So now he's back to being a solid 9, which I think will translate well with this group as the U.S. in the U.S. men's national team pool. In terms of the midfield, outside of Tyler Adams, who obviously isn't available, same with Cardoso. I like what I'm seeing. This puts a lot more pressure on Yunus Musah to come up to a level where I think Pochettino expects him to be with club form and playing time. And then, like you said, Serginho Dest is out. So Timothy Weah, I think, is the natural fit because he is playing right back, right wing back, at Marseille. So the key with Weah is he's flexible, but it's about finding the right spot for him. And if you're talking about a back 3, then I think that right wing back spot is a perfect fit. So now it's competing against Serginho Dest for the spot.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this all plays out, and obviously who the starting 11 is going to be for the Ecuador game. Now, there were a couple notable omissions, Big Tones, and 2 in particular, Yunus Musah and Joe Scally, were left off for coaching decisions. They are completely healthy, and Mauricio Pochettino elected to go a different direction. And when asked about it in the press conference, he gave a bit of a prickly answer. He said this: there are not too many players around the world that they don't depend on the level. But you can talk about it. I don't know. Maybe you can ask me why Messi's not in the roster. No, this type of player like Maradona, Pelé, I don't know. But when you were talking about different names, I think you need to respect the players that are here. So ultimately what he's saying is like, yes, of course, if Messi and Pelé, Maradona aren't in the team, then I'll answer that question as to why they're not in camp. Because those guys are aliens. They're the best of the best. But when we're just talking about, and this is what me and Paul Tenorio talked about on Thursday. If you're just asking us about regular guys, like I don't need to I don't need to explain myself with just like regular dudes. What are your thoughts on his answer, Big Tones? And then ultimately, are you surprised he left off Yunus Musah and Joe Scally?
His answer is a little bit odd to me, right? We've seen managers, including Mauricio Pochettino, who have answered that question before this camp, right? I think he kind of said, okay, now it's time to just talk about the guys that are here moving forward. That's kind of what I got out of it. Thomas Tuchel's had to answer why Phil Foden and Jude Bellingham aren't in camp, and a couple other guys, Jack Grealish as well, and he's answered those questions, right? You know, I don't know if you caught him in the moment. I don't know if you caught him, at the time in his career where he said enough is enough. I was a little bit surprised. But with regards to the guys that are left off, just my opinion, is I'm not surprised about Yunus Musah because he really hasn't settled in just yet to become the player that we think he can be at Atalanta. He's still got some work to do there, although he's getting some minutes now. Joe Scally, that's the one that surprises me because we're just, talking about this has been sort of a merit-based roster, right? This is guys have earned this. Joe Scally plays week in and week out in the Bundesliga. And I'm getting the sense, I don't know, could it really come down to a golf cart ride in the end? I don't know. Maybe it can. Maybe that's a sign for a manager that says this guy's not good for my locker room or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out in my head because the Scally one to me is the one you don't bring him into this camp when he's played already essentially in a back 3 for you. That one I'm a little bit surprised. I think if he doesn't come in November, Joe Scally, and he's still playing at his club, Chuck, I think then maybe we can start to read that he's not a Mauricio Pochettino guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to give any context to the golf cart incident? Apparently,
yes. Apparently, there's a story out there that there was some donuts being done in a golf cart. I will say this: I can see how managers around the world would take that as like disrespectful. Now, again, they're rumors. They're out there. If it's that or it's something else, there's something, Jimmy. Because we got this new show. I'm going to steal the title of the new show that we have here. Numbers don't lie, right? The numbers don't lie in that Joe Scally's playing every week. He's healthy every week. He's played for a couple years now, every single week. So that's why they don't add up. And in the end, it could just be, hey, that's not my kind of player. It doesn't matter how much he plays at his club team. It's not the guy that I like. So we have to take all of that into account. I just thought this camp, I don't know. I'm thinking you guys both had him on your roster projections. I know I did, and I'm pretty sure you guys did too. I can't remember, but that was the one that surprises me.
Yeah. Okay, that's a big one. How about you, Chuck? Give us your thoughts on Yunus Musah, Joe Scally. Just the comments. I don't know if you want to jump in here on that. I will say very quickly, Joe Scally plays for Borussia Mönchengladbach, and they are terrible this season. Absolutely terrible.
They are terrible, and so doesn't Gio Reyna. So Gio Reyna is
I forgot Gio plays there too. He's just injured. Yeah,
in a different situation, as he just needed playing time, and he needs to just find a rhythm and find joy, and find health, as he's still battling. Just staying fit. So unfortunate situation for him, but can he, come by March, can he put 2 months together of consistent playing time? That's going to be the challenge for him, because when you've been out for so long, there's so much you got to catch up on in terms of your body adjusting to training every week, to matches every week, recovery. So the balance of pushing yourself, getting stronger, which he needs to do. He needs to build back his strength in his legs, but at the same time, monitoring your situation after you've depleted yourself and depleted your muscles post matches. It's a really delicate balance, and typically the balance that I got wrong more times than not when I was coming back from all the surgeries that I had to come back from. So it's one of those things where we're hopeful. You got to be patient, but it's a long road ahead of him. In terms of Yunus Musah, we had him on the show. He asked for a break. I don't think that went over really well with Mauricio Pochettino. To Tony's point, there are some things that maybe he doesn't really appreciate or respect or agree with, whatever the situation is. And so now you're on the back foot.
Yeah.
And you gotta kind of figure out a way to get to the front of the line. And so for me, not only did he go back to Milan, when I think there were a lot of questions, like, does he return? Does he not? He goes back. He plays, but then he still moves. And he's lost a whole preseason of adjusting to a new team of eventually that's what was going to happen. So he goes to Atalanta, which was inevitable that he was going to leave. He was never going to be the first choice at Milan at this point. So you go to a side that is already set in that position with veterans. We're talking the captain, Ederson, who was linked to some of the biggest clubs in the world, and Pasalic is someone who can also play in that deep role, but he's also playing more advanced role. So he's in a really difficult situation. So for Yunus Musah to really get back into the picture, he's got to play.
Yeah,
and to break into that side enough, you got to say, hey, job well done, because that is a really difficult midfield to break into. So he went from one pretty bad situation to another in terms of, man, this team is pretty much set in the midfield. And so he's got a lot of work to do to get back into the picture.
I think also, and we've seen this, we've probably been or suffered from it at some point, when a coach makes up their mind about you, maybe you didn't play particularly well, or maybe you're kind of on the fence about whether he wants you, and then there's something else that happened, whether it's doing donuts in a golf cart and being disrespectful like Joe Scally apparently did, or Yunus Musah saying he wanted out. Now you've given that coach a little ammunition to kind of connect a dot, like a red dot in this particular instance, where like, hey, you know what? maybe this guy isn't for me, and this has solidified it for me. And that's a tough spot to get out of. I just want to throw that out there. All right.
But before we even do that, this is the thing that kind of I've been struggling with to understand. If you're in a position where you need to move on, right? You have a feeling things haven't gone well. Wouldn't you say, you know what? I got to play in this Gold Cup to boost my stock.
I agree.
To show
it's
you're
a no-brainer.
I'm ready for the next move. Instead of taking a break when you didn't play that much, and you come back to the same situation, and then you got to move. And clubs are kind of unsure of where you are because you didn't really play that much, where you could have had a whole summer to play international football. So it's a great show. Yeah, it's a tough position.
And you wonder what the communication was like. And there's a lot of talk, a lot of narrative around the communication and lack thereof from Mauricio Pochettino to the players. But before we get into that part of it, Mark McKenzie was on Morning Footy a little bit earlier and spoke about some of this communication. Let's take a listen.
Topic of conversation has been the communication preferences from the coaching staff with the locker room. So was there much conversations with Poch and the staff between missing camps or coming in? And what's it been like, I guess, since in the brief time? I know that you just got in last night, but in the brief time since you got back?
No, it's ultimately rekindling everything. We had a long summer together, so I think going through a tournament together, you figure out little nuances and ways to go about meeting with each other, ways to communicate with one another. So I think through these experiences of working with them over the last year, you figure out what works and what doesn't work, and naturally you build a connection. And sometimes it's more communication, sometimes it's less communication, but I think each player is different. But at the end of the day, work has to be done on the pitch. So whether you're in camp, whether you're not in camp, I think that speaks for itself. You just want to get back here into the team and do everything you can to put the jersey back on.
All right, that was Mark McKenzie on Morning Footy a little bit earlier today from Tommy Scoops, Tommy Bogert asking that question. So we had a little production call yesterday, and we had a nice, healthy conversation, Big Tones, about the kind of communication we received back in the day from our respective national team coaches. And I remember, I'll go first. I had gotten in my first camp in 2005. Okay, January. I did well and went with the team down to Trinidad for a World Cup qualifier. And I was cruising. Got some good feedback from Glenn Meyernick, Mooch, rest in peace, and Bruce. And I was like, sweet. I feel like I'm part of this a little bit. I'm part of the conversation now. And then March came. There was a game against Mexico, and in Mexico City at the Estadio Azteca. And I didn't get a call. I didn't get nothing. And then, then I see Oguchi Onyewo's in, Bocanegra's in, Berhalter's in, Corey Gibbs is in. And I was heartbroken. We lost that game 2-1. And I actually just watched the highlights yesterday. We got thumped a little bit. They had a lot of chances. So maybe that actually worked out for me. So sometimes maybe not getting called in isn't the worst thing. But I just didn't receive any communication from Bruce. And that was pretty much how it went. If they wanted to use you, you're going to get an email from Pam Perkins. Shout out to Pam. And if you didn't, you just had to wait your turn and hopefully play well enough in the next window of time with your club team to hopefully get back on the radar.
Yeah, Pam Perkins, shout out to the GOAT.
Yeah, the goat doing everything. Yeah, you needed anything, that's where you went. This isn't really a surprise to me. I thought, and I will say, when Greg Berhalter was there and we heard all of this communication and videos and clips and all of that stuff being traded, in between camps, that I just thought, oh, that's the new way, managers do things, I guess. I because I'm not there, who knows, right? It's 2025. Maybe that's what everybody does. And, but it seems like that's not. I didn't have communication. Matter of fact, we waited for faxes, believe it or not, to come in. So that's how long ago I started with the national team.
You had a pager. It was
like God's honest truth.
Laura's paging me.
The kids listening have no idea what a fax machine is.
I know.
So
just go look it up. Yeah, go look
it
on the internet. You'll find it somewhere.
Carrier. I think you had a carrier pigeon for your first camp.
But there was no communication in between. I will say this. Of the coaches like Bob Gansler, the ones that were there for a while, Bob Gansler, Bora Milutinovic, forget it, zero. I was the captain. I told this story. I didn't talk to the guy for 2.5 years. So I was his captain. I never had a conversation with the guy, right? Basically. And then Bruce Arena, I think if you would have called Bruce and said, hey, why am I not in camp? Like he would have told you. You might not have heard what you wanted to hear, but he would have told you. And I'm guessing that if you called, but I don't think it's set up that way now. I think this is more normal. I'm getting at than maybe what we saw under Greg Berhalter. And I will say this to end, Chuck. I don't know that anyone is right or any one way is right and any one way is wrong. What we're seeing now is more my experience when I played than what Greg was doing with the national team before.
Yeah, I would just add that you got to think about different circumstances. And so, Greg was pretty hands-on because you got to remember most of the players were kids. They had no international experiences. And so he was thinking, okay, how do I continue to push them in between because they have to catch up? And, he had a certain style that he wanted to implement, similar to his club career as a coach, because he had never coached internationally either. So there's a number of essentially rookies in this spot. And he thought, okay, this is how I can really move the group forward in the interim before we get back together. Now, Pochettino comes from the camp of, I've coached Harry Kane and Son Heung-min and Messi and Mbappe and Neymar. I don't have time to be communicating with you. You either know you're coming into the camp because you received an email, or you didn't come, and you also know why you're not coming, because you're not performing. Because if you were performing in this manner, then you'd be coming in. And that's how it was when I was playing with the national team. If Bob Bradley if I didn't get an email, I knew it was because, hey, I'm not playing as well as I need to be playing. And I could look in the mirror and say, I'm not, because look at the amount of goals I'm scoring or not scoring, or chances I'm creating. So you could look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not doing enough. Or maybe there's guys who are doing more than what I'm doing. I'm playing well, but these guys are scoring, 15, 20 goals. So you're saying, okay, I need to catch up. So ultimately, I think every manager has a different way of coaching, and this kind of puts more pressure on the players to take care of business so that they do get that email. It was almost reading a little bit of how we reacted when we would get those emails of being like, yeah, it's brought the excitement back, because you didn't know. Nothing was guaranteed until you saw that email. You had no idea. So I like the fact that Pochettino's kind of bringing that back into the fold of, man, it's a really special to get that email.
Hey, Jimmy, sorry to jump in. In 2002, when the World Cup team was announced, if you remember, I was the third goalkeeper on that team. It was between me and Tim Howard, right, that we're going to be the third goalkeeper on the team. Do you know how I found out? I found out during
machine.
No. We were past that by that point, but I know where you're going. I found out.
This photo is amazing. For everybody listening, it's Tones holding a fax machine.
You guys are funny. But Jimmy,
that's a good one.
they did a reveal show on another big network, sports network, and I found out during that reveal show, standing at my island in my kitchen with my wife.
I found out in 2006, Bruce Arena went on another big sports show and did the same thing. And the story about mine was that the day of, this was when AOL instant messaging was around, AIM, and Landon Donovan sent me a message. He goes, hey, I got great news. And I was like, oh my God, Landon has to know whether I'm in or not, right? So I get this message and I go, oh yeah, what's up? He goes, you can save a bunch of money with your car insurance by switching to Geico, and I was like, what a dick, So he ended up like totally teasing me. I feel like he had to know. You don't do that to somebody if they don't actually make the roster. But yeah, I found out the same way. I found out on television that I ended up making the team, and then my cell phone melted. So because everybody was so excited. But yeah, ultimately I got it the same way. So Bruce definitely has a style and keeps you in suspense. I do want to get into a little bit more of Mauricio Pochettino's understanding and communication with the clubs and not the players, but we're going to do that right after this break, so don't go anywhere.
This is European soccer's biggest stage.
Written in the stars! What a difference she has made!
The question is, can you handle it?
The crowd here feels electric.
Stream every match of the UEFA Women's Champions League on Paramount+.
All right, welcome back in to Call It What It Is. Johnny Bornstein's favorite Average a Good podcast. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie, Chuck Chasing, Chuck Wagon, Davies, and Tony Big Tones Meola. And I did want to finish a little bit of part of the conversation, but we had to get to that first break. What I did find interesting with Mauricio Pochettino and his coaching staff is that he is having dialogue with the clubs of these players. So he has talked to Brian Schmetzer at Seattle Sounders. He wanted to know what's going on with Christian Roldan. How does he fit in? What's his training habits like, right? If you talk to a player directly about that stuff, we could all probably predict what the answers are going to be. But when you talk to the coach, you get different.
Yeah, I'm the best. I think I'm as good as Messi.
Yeah, exactly right. Right. So then you have the coaching staff probably reaching out to Max Allegri at Juventus and at AC Milan. That was previous, and Igor Tudor at Juventus and at Borussia Mönchengladbach, maybe talking to, I mean, everybody's they're having conversations, and now it's up to the player to perform to the point that I think we're starting to see a little bit more method to the madness of Mauricio Pochettino. You need to be performing day in and day out and conducting yourself at the highest level possible. And if you're not, we're going to find out. So I did appreciate that there is some dialogue happening. It's just not directly with the players, Chuck.
By the way, Jimmy, what coach is going to say, no, my player's not good? You know what I'm saying?
True.
If Mauricio Pochettino puts a call in the Schmetzer, and Roldan has been training like terrible, right? Just crap. You think Schmetzer's going to go, hey, that. You know what? Yeah, I wouldn't call him in because
That's fair.
Every coach is going to defend their player. Every coach is going to say, hey, this guy's a national team guy. Because think about it. They're also are trying to raise the stock because worst case scenario, they sell them, but they get rewarded so they can go and reinvest that money, right? If they're playing in Europe or they're playing in MLS and they're trying to raise the value, right? Or it's just saying I coached a World Cup player, you know, I raised the level of a player so that he got included. So there's a number of reasons. A coach is not going to come out and say, this guy should not be there.
You could sandbag a player so that you could make sure they don't go into camp, and that way you have it for the
Jimmy. If that ever came out, you are done for. You are. Yeah. That's sorry for everybody listening. That's what Jimmy's gonna do. He's gonna sandbag one of his players. I wouldn't call him in. He doesn't train well.
But listen, Tony, you've been around from a coach to coach. When you have a real talk between coach to coach, some insight does come out. Like, hey, this player is incredible in games, but in practice, I wish they gave me a little bit more. I don't think that's sandbagging a player. I don't think it's. Yeah, but I do think that some honesty does seep into those conversations.
Not if they're scoring goals, no one's going to tell you anything about
that.
Okay,
fair.
If you're the national team coach, and I do want to say this before we forget, I think it's fair to say no player has made a real big deal of this, that they don't get communication in the, and every one of them has said during camp the communication is great. Like Mark McKenzie in that interview, we just did it on Morning Footy. He talked about that time at the Gold Cup. And this is a guy I think that played less than 20 minutes. I forget, we had the number yesterday, but I think it's less than 20 minutes in the Gold Cup. And he talked about how important the information, the communication during the camp, what he learned. So I think it's fair to give that side of it as well. With regards to talking to another coach, I'm thinking if you're the national team coach, right, you're going to, let's use Schmetzer. Charlie brought up Brian Schmetzer. Let's use that example. I go to Brian Schmetzer. I don't need to ask Brian Schmetzer about something I already saw. The reason I'm talking to you about Christian Roldan or anybody else is because I think that he's a guy that can help the national team. I want to learn more off the field or about his training habits and all of that stuff, not necessarily his play. I don't need Brian Schmetzer to tell me about what I need for the national team. I need him to tell me about the things I haven't learned yet, right? Because I'm making a decision based on not all of the life facts, if you will. So we've seen that in the article, right, that we're talking about in the Athletic, who was it, Paul Tenario and Henry Bushnell, right, that wrote the article, where his assistant coach Javier went to Schmetzer and they're talking about other things about Christian Roldan. So I don't know that they go there and ask him about his tactical awareness and his. You've seen that already,
right? No, it's good insight. I appreciate.
Hey, I love this comment from Kevin. He said, a little upset we're spending so much time speaking about how much talking and communicating is done. It's formation and tactics that's going to make the difference, not if you text with someone. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I get it. I understand, but if you want people to run through a wall for you, right, to execute your tactics and formation at the highest level, there has to be some trust, and there has to be a buy-in to how you believe in people.
Buy-in is everything for a coach.
Yeah. So
and to talk about communicating, he's trying to figure out if this guy doesn't play, is he a problem? Because Mauricio Pochettino has already talked about that. If this is towards the end of the roster, we hear it from every cycle. If you're player 23, 20 to 26 now, if you aren't playing, you're not involved, what value do you bring to the group? What value? Because if you take away anything emotionally, if you bring down the level in practice, if you're sulking, if you're all about doing XYZ that is a distraction, you are not going to the World Cup, and you have to get those decisions right. Look at every big team.
Yeah.
I look at France, for instance. France, World Cup winners in 98. 02, that locker room was not right. They crash out of the group stage. 2006, they get to the final. 2010, debacle. And it's all about the right characters. And if you don't get the right groups, and you can look at those rosters full of world-class players. It's not about the ability. It's about the locker room and the right mix of players and getting the players who aren't playing, who aren't going to be happy they're not playing, still bought in to what the coach is pushing. So I think that's why we're talking about communication, is because you want those guys to fight for you. Of course it's a World Cup, home soil. They're going to be motivated, but you want them to go the extra mile. And that's what the great coaches can do.
We'll see if Mauricio Pochettino is squeezing the team in the right way. All right, let's get into Americans abroad. We'll get into some notable weekend performances. Haji, 8th championship goal of the season in a 5-0 win versus Sheffield Wednesday after scoring a brace against Millwall the game before that. Patrick Agyemang scored his first goal for Derby in a 1-1 draw versus Southampton, a little dunk at the back post, a little header. Flo Balogun subbed on for the second half in a 2-2 draw versus Nice. That's for Monaco. Noah Kai Banks started and scored at the back post, sliding in a little half volley. Good goal at the start of their 3-1 win versus Wolfsburg. He got subbed out a little bit later. A little raw in some of the decision-making. I watched a portion of this game, and I think he's a next cycle guy. I know some people are calling for him now, but I think he's going to be a next cycle guy. And then Rokas Puchtas scored in a 1-0 win versus Vukovar. A very well-taken goal at the top of the box, beat a couple players, and slotted it back to the near post across the goalkeeper's path. Very, very good goal. That was the game winner. And I guess the American striker of the week, there's only one choice. It's going to be Haji Wright. That's our very brief segment that we like to, a recurring segment that we have here on Call What You Want. So Haji Wright, on fire, leads the Golden Boot race in the championship for Coventry. Coventry's absolutely crushing it right now and look hard to beat. They've won 3-0, 4-0, and 5-0 in their last 3 games. Frank Lampard got that special sauce, and Haji Wright is definitely a beneficiary of that. Of his last 3 goals, 2 were tap-ins, but hey, you still got to be in a good spot to make it happen, as Chuck knows quite well. All right, let's go back to the camp, though, Chuck. Excuse me, Tones. I'm going to go to you on this first. What's one player that stands out for you of the names that we've talked about and discussed over the last 2 shows or show and a half? Who do you think has the most to prove or the most to gain in this October camp, especially because some key names are out? I'm looking at the midfield, but maybe you have somewhere different.
I'm looking at Brenden Aaronson right now because I feel like Brenden Aaronson's been in and out. He's, obviously last year, a really good run with Leeds, playing 40-plus games in a number 10 position for a team that scored the most goals in that division. Now in the Premier League, a little bit different. He's got over 50 caps with the national team. He's got World Cup experience, but I don't know that he's broken in just yet to Mauricio Pochettino's kind of thinking where, because no matter what, Pochettino and his staff, they have whatever the number is, 10, 12, 15 guys in their mind right now. Like, these are guys going to the World Cup if everything stays on track. I don't know that he's one of those guys right now. So, Chuck, that's where I'll go first. Brenden Aaronson is a guy.
So very quickly, kind of using what we were talking about before, Chuck, with being a guy that is just going to be a good team guy. What does he bring? What's the number 23 guy roster bring? Brenden Aaronson, for me, I look at him and think super sub. He screams super sub to me.
Yeah.
You got a tired team on the other side, a good attitude, going to run through a wall for you no matter what. So I don't know if he's necessarily on the team, to your point, Tones, but I feel like he's ticking a few important boxes for let's say the end of the roster. Okay,
Chuck,
Chuck,
Chuck, two things stick out with Aaronson. The new formation with two guys underneath, and then Zendejas' performances in the last match, right? His performance in the last match and what it did to our thinking. Those are the two obstacles for me that he needs to get over right now to become one of those guys, Chuck. For me, that's where I'll start with Brenden Aaronson.
Okay.
Well, I would say Brenden Aaronson, when you're playing a back three, it does fit. It fits him more so than playing a back four with wingers, because he's not a winger. But if you're saying, he's going to tuck inside, that's actually his best position.
Yeah,
is almost like that free roll 10, and that's where he wants to be, and that's his best position because he has the ability to make those runs. He's not necessarily tied to one wing. He's not tied to beating people 1v1 out wide. So that's where he can lose track of his markers, is more central with his late runs, because he's such a busy bee. But for me, if I'm looking at this roster, I'm going, okay, who's one of those guys? I think Diego Luna is one of those guys. How many times have we talked to him, and he's hardworking, he's humble. He will put his body on the line. And I think he's already proven that to Mauricio Pochettino in a big way, just to start, taking an elbow to the nose, broken nose, blood everywhere. Hey, throw me back in. Don't even think about taking me off, and then contributing, right? So I think for me, Diego Luna is one of those guys, if you're saying, hey, 20 to 26 in that range, if everyone's playing at a high level, he probably fits in that bucket. He can come on, he can fight, he's good on the ball. That's one of those players that I think he fits the perfect attributes and mentality to be in a squad as a 20 to 26 in that roster spot. When you're talking about Tillman's back playing, Zendejas is in the best form of his life. Obviously Christian's one of those positions. So there's not too many spaces available when you're talking about a back three, and Luna's one of those two guys that plays underneath the striker in terms of spots open.
Yeah, so those are two names that, yes, I think we should be discussing. I'm surprised, though. Tyler Adams is not in camp. This is a wide open audition. Johnny Cardoso is not in camp. And so this is take it with both hands opportunity with Aiden Morris, Tanner Tessman, James Sands. Christian Roldan has another audition here to prove why he should be in the team as well.
Yeah, but who's your 20 to 26 guy?
Well, yeah, I think if Christian Roldan,
if you had to pick one.
Well, I think you're going to get two out of that group. This is a big opportunity for Weston McKennie to get back into the team, and
yeah, but he's going to be in the team.
He's going to be on the team, but but in the back three, where does he fit? Right, where does he fit in that midfield, and where are we going to?
He's one of the two. It's an easy one.
Sixes or in the tens. If we play a box, he's one of the sixes, or becomes an 8. Is that what you're saying?
So if we're talking about the back three spot,
let's say we have a box in midfield with two tens and two sixes.
It's two sixes. That's where he would play.
All right, no problem.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a big opportunity so for him to come, okay, this is me. I'm going to be here. I'll be off of Tyler Adams' shoulder at the start of the World Cup. Okay, let's see what that looks like. And then I think you're still going to get two midfielders here. So it could be a Roldan who he has that veteran experience, clearly is liked by Mauricio Pochettino and the staff. And then you got Tanner Tessman. It's a big opportunity. He's been on fire this season for Lyon. And Aiden Morris has been very good for Bro.
Were we not supposed to just pick one player?
I know. I'm just trying to say.
You're going down the whole roster, bro.
Anybody else, Jim?
Hey, Jim.
Yeah, I do.
Hey, Jim. Hey, wrap it up. Huh?
Wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up.
God. Listen. What's funny is I just brought that up because I think that I was surprised you guys didn't go there first.
Because we're talking about 20 to 26. We're talking about who's one of those guys who's going to add value and not play. And you're going down.
I'm just saying
every starter.
We're missing Adams and Cardoso, and you have Tessman, Sands.
So out of those guys right now, Aiden Morris, Tessman.
I think Roldan will end up being in. I think Roldan will be in.
So he'll be that 20 to 26 guy.
That's what I think. Yeah,
Okay.
but I think Tessman's going to make the team anyway. So Tessman will be in, and then Roldan will be. They'll both be in that 2026.
Who's going
But
to
I
make
want
the
to talk.
2030 team, Jim? Who's going to?
Noah Kai Banks is going to make the 2030 team. Listen, let's go to defenders. Because listen, you have Tim Reams, Chris Richards,
He's
CC,
still
Cameron
going.
Vickers comes back in. Listen, just a big opportunity. Who's going to be that third center back? So
Go
you
on,
have
Jim.
CCB, Miles Robinson. It's nice to see Anthony Robinson back into the team. So anyway, I just thought I'm actually most curious about center back because I'm a former center back. But I was surprised you guys just didn't jump into the midfield. That's all I was saying.
Right,
Stop busting my balls.
All right, no, Tony. So Chris Brady, he's in goal. He's got an awesome opportunity here. He's coming into camp. We got Matt Freese. He's been the starter. We got Patrick Schulte. He hasn't been in the camp now. He's back in the camp. Matt Turner, he was in the camp. He's back. This is a crazy opportunity. We got 3 goalkeepers
I'm
fighting.
excited about
for
this
the
camp,
I'm
Chuck.
so excited. Okay, then we got Max Sarfson, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Freeman McKenzie.
I can't believe. Listen. Hey, Chuck's giving me a hard time, but he brings up Diego Luna. Diego Luna's making the team, dude. Pick somebody else.
As a 20 to 26. As a 20 to 26.
Where did we start the 20 to 26? Where did that ever come into the conversation? I just thought this was a big opportunity.
We were talking about players who will add value, who will be at the end of the roster, not guys who are going to be counted on to start, and certainly not the guys who come 1, 2, 3 off the bench to change a game. Now, if you're talking about the biggest opportunity in this camp, regardless of your situation, I think it's Weston McKennie has the biggest point to prove to Mauricio Pochettino because he's been left out.
There we go.
The Nations League, it didn't go well, so he hasn't been back in since. Now, he had the Club World Cup, which prevented him from even getting the opportunity to come in the camp. But I think in terms of restamping himself, redefining his importance in the squad, it's Weston McKennie. I think in this camp, this is the biggest camp for him to say, hey, not only am I important to this team, I'm essential for us moving forward because I'm grinding in Serie A at Juve, grinding minutes, Champions League, Serie A. So if we're talking about as a whole, I think this is a camp that Weston McKennie needs to show out in.
All right. Any other names, tones you want to bring up?
I think we covered everybody. I think we got them all.
Tony, there's no more oxygen left for you, Tony. Tony's over here like this.
I love it.
I think all these camps are important for all of these guys now, right? I don't know that Pochettino has a starting 11. I think if we pick the starting 11, we could probably agree that Chris Richards, Tyler Adams, Flo Balogun, and Christian Pulisic and Anthony Robinson, right? So you might have 1 or 2 more. The point is that there's still a lot of spots in the 11 from probably 7 to 26, Chuck, or 8 to 26. There's still a lot of guys that need to establish themselves in this group.
All right. That's a good way to end this segment. We're going to take our last break and call what you want. When we come back, we're going to talk about the U20 World Cup. Maybe I'll get to talk this time because Chuck clearly wants more of the mic. Don't go anywhere.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale. Ronaldo. Wonderful goal.
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Welcome back in to Jimmy Talks a Lot. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Big Tones. And we are talking about the US U20s. Big Tones, you have a lot of experience with this particular age group over the years, coaching this with Tab Ramos for a couple of cycles, if I'm not mistaken. And our U20s started off hot. They beat New Caledonia 9-1. They beat France 3-0, 3 late goals in that particular game. They ended up losing to South Africa 2-1 after going up 1-0. I gave up 2 goals before halftime and just couldn't find their way back into it, but still finished atop of the group. They're now slated to take on Italy, who finished second to Argentina in their group in the round of 16. What have you seen in this particular U20 World Cup from the U.S. that gets you excited, Big Tones?
Well, I think we were excited going into it. We had a chance to talk to Ben Kremoski yesterday about this group. He's captained this side and has done a really, really good job. I think the expectation going into these youth tournaments now is a minimum of getting to the quarterfinals of this. Looking at this team and the way that they've played, I could see them go further than that in this competition. Italy is the next opponent in the round of 16. I don't know how the bracket matches up after that. I think it's a fairly tough bracket from there. but it's an opportunity for Marko Mitrovic and this group to make some noise at the Under-20 World Cup. And at some point, we're going to have to find a youth team that gets to a finals of a World Cup. I don't know that this is the team, but this is as good an under-20 team as we've put in the tournament. It's guys that everybody is familiar with because they're playing professionally, which was never the case with past U20 teams. I covered a bunch of them before I actually coached in the cycles, and just to find out information on these guys was really difficult because they were playing at colleges and club teams. Now they're in a different environment now, and Marko Mitrovic has done a good job with them. The big result, obviously, Chuck, is the 3-0 over France, and they left it late. I think it was 80-plus minutes before they scored their first goal, and they ended up winning 3-0. But that's a massive result against a really good French side.
Who's the best 20 side that you coached, Tony? Which one had?
Well, remember, there were 3 cycles that went to the quarterfinals. The one that lost to what's his name?
Serbia? Or?
That coached in Chicago, was coaching in Pjanovic. His group was a team that won. Pano's group is the team that won the World Cup that year. That was Zach Steffen, that group. That was really good. And I think we've established ourselves. Remember, for a period of time, England won the U20s and the U17 World Cup. I don't know if they were like that same cycle or it was skipped a cycle. I can't remember. But we were the only team in the world that for those 3 cycles put the 17s and the U20s into the quarterfinals at the youth national team level on the men's side. The only team in the world, not Brazil, the teams that were really good at those levels, the Nigerias at that time, and I know Nigeria is struggling at the first team level now, but we were the only country in the world that was doing that. And then we never took the next step. Like the next step, I think twice in those 20 cycles, the team that we lost to in the quarterfinals was the team that won the World Cup. I don't know that there's any consolation, but I'm just bringing it up as reference. So we've been good at the youth team levels. Now we got to take the next step, and it's going to be this next generation of guys that take that next step because of the minutes they're playing professionally.
All right. Italy, who were playing, beat Australia 1-0 in their first game. They ended up tying with Cuba's first ever point in the U20 World Cup in their history, 2-2. Now, Italy were up 2-0, in complete control of that game, got a red card. And then, honestly, they kind of self-destructed. They gave up 2 penalties in the last 20 minutes and just lacked some discipline. And I think that's something the U.S. can take advantage of. And then Argentina beat them in the last group game 1-0. So they're 1-1-1 going into the knockout rounds. If we get past Italy, which based on history, since we've made 4 straight quarterfinals, we should, then we'll take on the winner of Morocco versus South Korea. Now, Morocco beat Spain 2-0, beat Brazil 2-1, and then they ended up losing to Mexico. Gilberto Mora has actually scored 3 goals in 3 games for Mexico. Mexico goes through as well as the second. I didn't know if Mexico was going to get through this group, but it was Morocco, Mexico, Spain.
They had the group of death, and they came through flying. I could not be more impressed with that Mexico side. For them to play, first game, you have Brazil, you have Spain, and then Morocco. Top notch stuff.
Yeah, it's great. And so we're going to potentially play Morocco and or South Korea, potentially, hopefully, October 12th. But the U.S.-Italy is on Thursday, and that should be a good game against Italy. If we get past Morocco, South Korea can find our way into the semifinals. That back half of the bracket on our side would be Paraguay, Norway, Japan, France. There is a potential to see France again, who might feel a little hard done by after we slapped them around there 3-0 in that particular game. All right, let's pivot now. That's the U20 World Cup. We're excited to see how that plays out. Let's talk MLS. And want to give a shout out to the Philadelphia Union, who clinched the Supporters Shield as the best team over 10 months. Everywhere else around the world, that would be league champion. But here, you got to fight it out for a couple extra weeks to win MLS Cup. Philly, under Brenden Aaronson, his first year in charge, taking over for Jim Curtin, has done an excellent job of getting everybody aligned and on the same page. But Chuck, you wrote an article on The Athletic saying, yes, congratulations to Philly, but I don't know if they're the favorites for MLS Cup. So, yikes, you put it out there. You can obviously going to stand behind it. He's rolling his eyes. But you had LAFC as one of your legit contenders with the addition of Son Heung-min.
I mean, all I could say is, of course, the Philadelphia Union have played throughout the full season of the high press and putting a lot of pressure on teams and getting the results. But same thing that happened with Bradley Cornell at St. Louis, where they surprised everybody throughout the full season. But at the end of the year, teams figured out, okay, we know how they play. We know what their style is. And they ran out of gas. I don't know if the Union are going to run out of gas per se, but it does feel like the way they play, it might be tough in the playoffs, the style that they play, because they do leave themselves open. Now, I watched them play most recently against the the New England Revolution in the game that I was calling. And is it anywhere near an attractive style at all? No, it's not. And you don't need to have an attractive style to win. But what I will say is, when I'm looking across the league, Vancouver, LAFC, I mean, right now, you're looking at Son and Bouanga. They scored their team's last 18 goals.
That's incredible.
That is historic. I mean, that's what my article was really about. Is we've seen some incredible dynamic duos throughout Major League Soccer's history. I start with Echeverri and Jaime Moreno, right? What a duo. But and think about Jovinko and Altidore and you know, I don't know so much Robbie Keane and Landon Donovan were a duo, but they won a lot of games together. But this in particular, I mean, Carlos Vela, Diego Rossi, I mean, that was a little bit of a dynamic duo per se. But when you talk about just two players solely responsible for creating and scoring for your team, and the way that they did, I'm talking just 2 months, August to now, absolutely insane that these two players, 18 goals, and we're talking about defend with the rest of the group, where eight players defend low block, let these two run. Not too many teams are going to stop these two on a counter. And now in the playoffs, that's going to be the question is, if I'm coaching against LAFC, I'm going to say, guys, we aren't taking any risks. We are giving up zero counterattacks to LAFC and see how they can break us down. That's going to be the challenge for them. But ultimately, I think Inter Miami are still going to have a say. I think defensively, that's been their fault ever since they've acquired Lionel Messi. But essentially, playoffs, they might be different. I think they've saved a little bit extra for this playoff run to kind of send Busquets off into the mighty clouds with a trophy. So I think there are just a number of teams ahead of Philadelphia Union when it's all said and done.
Hey, Tones, I think he's named every team. He hey, FC Cincinnati could do it, and Charlotte could do it, and San Diego FC.
I know you're holding on. I know you took all the oxygen out of the show.
You took
in
all
the mid block.
I named every team.
How many teams did I say? How many teams did I say?
There must have been seven. Seven teams.
I said
Philly,
LA,
Miami,
Vancouver, Miami. That's it.
I don't know. Man, I felt like a lot. There's a lot of talk in there for four teams. Go ahead, Tom.
Are we going back to is Philly the favorite? I would have said a couple weeks ago, maybe. I still think the East is going to be a bear in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think Orlando's a sleeper.
Yeah, they could be. We've been saying that all year. They've got some talented players. In the Western Conference, I mean, I probably would have went San Diego until about 7 or 8 games ago when Son got to LAFC. What they're doing now, look, I know we're going to go, eventually, 10 years from now, we'll look at the duos again, and they're going to be on the list, and, we'll talk about what they're doing at the moment is incredible. And we talk about being hot going into the playoffs, and they're as hot as anybody right now, and they just keep getting better and better. And finally, Steve Cherundolo on his last couple of weeks here in Major League Soccer, unfortunately, because he's going to step out the door, he wanted to become a possession team. He finally figured out, you know what, let's be the best version of who we really are right now, and that's a counterattacking side, and he brought in the perfect forward to fit that formation. So I'm picking right now LAFC to win this thing, if you're asking me today, Jimmy, for sure. And that's no injuries. As it moves forward, we might change that if there's an injury or so down the line. But they are solid, man.
What do you think about? And you brought him up, Vancouver, Chuck, with Ryan Gault, who was one of their best players last season, now back healthy, and he just came in and played in the Canadian Championship recently and scored. You have Thomas Muller in there, is obviously going to give you some experience. He's got a little bit of that fun enthusiasm that I really like that he brings to the table, and got that clutch. There's something about Vancouver. They're one of the top defensive teams too. Me and Tony in particular will say that defense wins championships because we've seen it to be true. But they're one of the best defensive teams. Philadelphia, actually, the best defensive team in all of MLS. Then you have Minnesota, who are really difficult to play against. So I don't know if I would hitch my wagon to them going all the way. I think LAFC is in there. Seattle Sounders, did they run out of steam? I think you wrote that in the article that maybe they peaked a little bit too early this season. Usually they save it for the end. But experience matters, and they know that core knows how to win big games. This is going to be as wide open of a playoff for MLS in quite some time. I know it's kind of the league's kind of built that way, but this feels really fun to see who's going to step up and make the plays over the next couple weeks.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
I also like Jesper Sorensen as the manager for Vancouver. I think he's done a terrific job of giving them an identity, and it starts in the midfield. Also, remember, they lost Pedro Vite, who is also a top central midfielder, goes to Liga MX, and we're going to see him with Ecuador in this next window. But if you're talking about Andres Cubas and Berhalter kind of anchoring the midfield, they've done an incredible job in that 4-2-3-1, being the two players that are responsible for providing cover, winning up second balls, tough tackling, and then one they can play on the counter. They're good on set pieces. They got all the basics right. They do that extremely well. So when you're playing against a team that's pretty good in transition, and then can execute on a counter or set pieces, that's what I think makes them very dangerous. And like you said, Gault is one of those players who can continually put himself in an MVP conversation when he's fit and healthy, because he just finds a way to make a difference when he's playing. Gifted on the ball. I feel like he's still underrated in this league as much as he's done. So Vancouver are definitely going to be one of the tougher teams to kind of go through in the Western Conference.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting, and I'm ready for it. I'll say Vancouver gets through the West, and then in the East, I don't think we brought up FC Cincinnati, and I think they have a nice core of players that could do it. They haven't scored that many goals though. They've got 49 goals.
No, and you would think because they have Denke up top that
right.
But he's been so
while, right? He was injured, now he's back, which was good to see him get a goal.
He's been inconsistent though, even when before the injury, and then you're thinking, okay, is it the adjustment period? But a player like Son Heung-min, there is no adjustment period, so you're trying to what happened to that adjustment period? So again, we always know it's how teams arrive into the playoffs, the form. And if you're talking about form, no one's going to want to step on the field at LAFC.
Well, how about Inter Miami, just really quickly, because apparently Jordi Alba just announced that he is going to retire at the end of the season as well. So they're already putting out a kind of like a narrative. Hey, let's win it for Sergio Busquets, who announced that he's going to retire at the end of the season. And now they can double down and say Jordi Alba as well. So there could be some real positive emotional energy to make sure those guys finish their careers as champions. But I don't know if that's going to fix their defense. They can't play every spot.
Did Jordi Alba just do it this morning? He just announced it this morning?
Apparently he just announced on his social media accounts that he's retiring.
Okay.
That's a big change. I mean, they're going to go for it now. They
are going to go for it. Yeah. I mean, you got a motivated Messi on top of that. You got two players who are trying to do everything they can to go out with a trophy. That just makes Inter Miami that much more dangerous, especially given the fact that the supporter shield kind of slipped through their hands at the end. But they feel like they've learned a lot from last season, putting everything into the league and setting the all-time record for regular season points, and then sputtering out in the playoffs. They know this is the trophy. So I think that's what makes them a little bit more dangerous than last year, is the fact that they've saved up a little extra energy, knowing that this is the real trophy they're after.
Yeah, wow, it's going to be fun. And then I feel like we've been sleeping on San Diego FC all season, and they should be in the conversation because they've done a hell of a job getting 60 points, leading the Western Conference as it stands right now. Vancouver have a couple games or have a game in hand. They're also tied on 60 points. So
yeah, Mikey Veras gotta salute the performances he's been able to do consistently
100%.
throughout the year, the rotations, the tactics that they play. They play beautiful football.
And they got some players that can make plays, man.
Especially at home.
Dryer's excellent.
They've really done an
He's an
incredible
MVP
job.
candidate. I
For
mean,
For sure.
Yeah, I think Messi may have just passed him in the last.
I would have said Bouanga too.
Bouanga, yeah, I think Messi's going to win it for a second time in a row and be the first one ever to do it. But Dessler's an MVP candidate, man, in this league.
Yeah, 100%. His goal contributions have been ridiculous. All right, one last thing before we let everybody go. There is some big Champions League action happening today across our networks. It's the Women's Champions League. We got Juventus taking on Benfica, Paris FC taking on Leuven, Barcelona, Bayern Munich. Obviously good games, but the one for me that stands out is Arsenal versus Lyon. There is a bunch of women's national team players. You have Emily Fox on Arsenal. You got Jenna Neiswanger is on Arsenal as well, but she's kind of been on the outs. So that's been a point of contention. Ian Wright actually has come out and said, what's the deal? You got to make sure she's playing. And then Lyon, you have Lindsay Heaps. You got Lily Johannes, who's joined from Ajax. You have Corbin Albert, who recently got married. And so she has a different last name, and I can't think of what it is at the moment. But you have a lot of American players going to be playing in this one. So if you're going to make any time for the Women's Champions League this week, check out Arsenal versus Lyon. And that game will be on the CBS Sports Network. And across all of our networks, you can find all of these games, specifically Golasso Network as well. All right, that's it. Just wanted to give some love to the Women's Champions League. And what a show. Thank you guys, as always, for having some good discussions. And for everybody having patience with Chuck, he named a lot of teams there in the MLS playoffs. And who is going to win there? He's sucking all the air out of the last segment, talking about all the teams he thinks he's going to win MLS. He named almost all of them. And that's it. We'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks for joining, Tone.
Thanks for joining us from prison, apparently. Somebody said they looked like you were joining from prison.
Get him an oxygen tank.
Thursday, we'll have our regular show. Friday, we're going to have our watch-along, U.S. versus Ecuador. So make sure you keep it here and turn on notifications here on the Golasso America YouTube channel. All right, see you soon. Later.